Now, I think you clicked on this video because you are noticing that now that you're working on yourself, you're reaching for the stars, you're trying to, create success for yourself, the dynamics between you and your friends are changing. You are either losing friends, relationships with your friends are changing, you are becoming more distant with your friends. It's okay. It's just part and parcel of also just being in your 20s. If you're in your 20s or even 30s, you're still figuring yourself out, you're still working out what matters to you, what is aligned with you, what your standards are, what you are willing to tolerate, what you're not willing to tolerate amongst friends. It is a very, not turbulent in a negative sense, but just a lot is going on in your 20s and you're changing all the time. So naturally, friendships are going to kind of come in and out of your life. And I would actually argue that's a very positive thing. If you feel like you are constantly growing, constantly working on yourself, constantly trying to kind of become a better person and work on yourself, do the shadow work, of course, you're going to find that people come in and out of your life and, you lose certain people and you gain certain people. I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about why this might be happening outside of what I've just mentioned. The first thing probably is that you no longer want to be distracted. Once you decide, look, I'm going to hone in on my craft, I'm going to go for my goals, I'm going to really work at this and try and make this dream of mine happen, you're no longer going to want to engage in activities or engage with friends that keep you distracted. When I was 25, I would say I kind of made that decision like, no, I want to work on my goals. And before that, I was kind of going out every weekend, I was getting drunk. It was really fun. And I really actually look back on that time and think that was a really fun period of time in my life. But it reached a point where I was like, I either carry on being like this and just sort of make very little progress with my goals, or I get my head down. And when you want to get your head down, it means you have to make sacrifices. It means that you can't be around people that keep you distracted, that ask you to go on nights out, that take time away from your passions, that also like drain your energy, like outside of just being distractions in terms of like asking you to events, asking you to do things with them, getting drunk, which again, when you are hungover, you can't do work, like it's not practical. So sometimes we kind of move away from certain friends because they're engaging in that habit or that kind of lifestyle at that time. And because we cannot literally afford to be hungover, like we need to maximize our time to like work on what we need to work on, we can't go out as much. But what I was going to say is anybody that keeps you distracted as well mentally, like if you are kind of agonizing over friendships, you're worried about what they think about you, you're worried about being judged, you're worried that they're kind of blow hot and cold with you, that's also keeping you distracted. And when you kind of start going for your goals, you cannot physically maintain the energy that you spend on agonizing over whether or not they're good with you or not, and also have the energy for your goals, for your passions. Something has to give, and this is perhaps why you feel like you're losing people, or you feel like you've got fewer friends now, because you decided to set boundaries with your time. And people don't like it. People don't like the fact that you're starting to focus your energy more back to yourself. You're taking your energy back for you and not focusing it on them. That pisses a lot of people off. I definitely had that experience. People were expecting a certain level of energy from me that I was no longer willing to give, and it bothered them, and it was something that it pissed them off. And of course, like, they weren't willing to see necessarily that it was my boundaries being pushed and like my energy being taken. They just saw it as, oh, Hattie doesn't want to do this for me anymore, Hattie's not the same anymore, Hattie's changed. It's like, no, I just don't give you all my energy anymore. Like, using up your emotional labor and energy on people, first of all, that shouldn't even be a thing anyway. I've got plenty of videos on friendship loss and navigating sort of friendship breakups and that kind of thing. I've got loads, so there's a whole playlist. I will log it below. You don't have the same capacity as you once did to dedicate to agonizing over these friendships or like worrying about what people think about you. You're so focused that unfortunately you end up just losing friends that require you to give of yourself to them, which in my opinion is a benefit anyway, so good riddance. But that's maybe why you're losing people, is because you don't want to be distracted either by their lifestyle and the things that they engage in that keep you not focused, or it's the fact that you have to give of yourself emotionally to them and you're just not able to do that anymore now that you're prioritizing yourself. So I've already kind of mentioned this, but obviously if you have friends that maybe make bad choices and decide to engage in sort of like self-sabotaging activities, that can sometimes be a reason to move away from certain friends. And obviously if you're trying to make that transition from corporate work to working for yourself, your time is so precious because you've got to dedicate obviously you know, most of your week to your 9 to 5 or your corporate job. So the time that you have spare is really, really precious. Everybody's growing at a different rate, everybody's evolving at a different rate, and it's okay if you can't witness them continue to self-sabotage. Like, that's okay if you can't be there to witness that. You can be there for them, but you can't enable it. And if you communicate to them that you can't enable it and you can't watch them continue to do this, that's okay. I remember watching a Mel Robbins podcast and she explained this really well, but she came to it with so much compassion. She was like, no, look, you know, with my friends like this, I can say to them, look, I care about you, you know, I'm always there for you, but I'm no longer okay to just hear you talk about the same thing over and over again and not be willing to fix the problem. It's okay if you want to move away from people like that, because it does lower your vibration and it just lowers your mood. And it doesn't set you up for that space you need to be able to work on your goals. And that doesn't mean to just like discard people who are struggling. Of course not. You've got to see this with nuance, and you've got to see this, what I'm saying, with context. Contextually, it's not always going to be the case, but if you feel like it's starting to drain you and you're kind of doing a lot of emotional labor that you can no longer maintain and they're sort of sucking the life out of you, you got to think twice. And that might be a reason why you've walked away from somebody, because their self-sabotage is not something you can sort of comfortably witness until they're ready to change. Again, I've spoken about this in so many videos, but if somebody makes you feel like you're not considered, they're careless with either your time, they're happy to waste your time, for example, that's something that, you know, personally I can't really tolerate. People that are kind of like a bit reckless with your time and the time that they spend with you, and, you know, they don't really treat you as a friend. It's all this emotional labor and all this kind of effort that you're putting into somebody that fundamentally probably isn't that considerate of you or is a bit careless with your time and your energy and you. It's not worth the emotional labor. So it's okay if you want to kind of invest that in things that matter to you and people that make you feel good and make you feel like they care about you. That's okay. You can do that. Like, the moment that I've removed like people from my life that just hurt me and made me feel so inferior and just like small, I just don't do nearly the amount of overthinking, nearly the same amount of like agonizing, doing so much emotional labor. Like, I don't even think about that stuff now. Like, the only time maybe I do a bit of emotional labor is, say, if like, you know, me and my partner like disagree on something or have a bit of an argument, anything like that. But that's so few and far between. Like, it's so crazy to me how like every day I was so emotionally exhausted and stimulated by other people's problems. And now that I've kind of like decided to move away from those friendships, like, I'm so free. Like, I'm so free of that. I think as well, sometimes we lose friends because we just remind them of something they don't want to be reminded of. We remind them of their insecurities or what they're not or who they are. And that can be very triggering for people who maybe look at you and think, oh, they're following their dreams, they're choosing themselves, they're doing something for them and it's working. And if that's something that they wish that they could do, but maybe they feel like they can't, they don't have the capacity to, they don't, you know, they're not in the same space, that can be really jarring for them because you're kind of like a walking reminder of things that they want to maybe ignore, or they feel exhausted even considering. Like, you know, if you remind somebody of their insecurities, or if you remind somebody of like what they're not doing or what they could do, it's going to be triggering for them because they're not doing it and you are. So you're like this reminder constantly, especially if they're your friend, of who they could be in their head. And sometimes that's just, sometimes it's just too much. And I think a lot of people, I actually didn't think this, I just don't really ever expect anybody to support me, to be honest. I kind of just do my thing, and if people support me, then I'm very grateful for that, but I'm gonna do it anyway. But I think quite a lot of people I see online, you know, they say things like, oh, you know, I'm really surprised because I thought that my friends would support me in my business. You know, one of my favorite creators, she said, you know, if you want to find out who your true friends are, start a business and see what happens. And it's very true. The true friends will reveal themselves and they'll support you, they'll back you, they'll want good things to happen to you, and they'll actively sort of publicly as well support you. But the people that maybe, again, you remind them of something they don't want to acknowledge, they might not support you, because by supporting you, it's almost admitting that they feel sour or they feel like any kind of negative way towards you. It's admitting that you kind of remind them of what they're not doing or who they are or their insecurities and so on. Also, your friends aren't necessarily your target audience, and that's okay. Like, if I think about my products or, you know, my businesses, my friends are just not my target audience. Irrespective of that, I think people can still support you, and I think, you know, I think about my friends starting things out and I would still want to support them even though it's not necessarily I'm the target customer. because I just want them to do well, but not everybody has that kind of intent and not everybody wants people to do well. And I think you've also got to remember that like you are somebody that genuinely makes friends with people because you like them, you know, you get on with them, you like who they are. Some people become friends with people for strategic reasons, for reasons of like, oh, they have status, they have money, they have power, they have some kind of kudos, they have good energy about them, like I want to be around them. But once they are around them, they realize that, you know, they've kind of put them on a pedestal and they don't actually like them that much, or they don't gel with them that much, but they've kind of got attached to the fact they're friends now, so they can't move on. So I think sometimes basically people are friends with you for ulterior motives. And so the true friends come out when you start something like a business, when you start doing, you know, something that makes you happy and making money from it as well and gaining success from it. It's going to trigger people. You existing and reaching for the stars is going to trigger people, even people that you aren't even friends with, people online. It's going to bother people. I'm sure all of us have experienced like horrible online comments before. Like, it's people that you're triggering. I know that I post things and I know that I'm triggering people just from posting about something that I think. You may be reminding them of what they're not, you're reminding them of something that they don't want to acknowledge fundamentally. So maybe you might be losing friends, or you might have lost friends as a result of this, and that's okay. It's a good bullshit filter. It's a great filter to work out who is truly for you and who isn't. Kind of related to what I was saying towards the beginning about being unaligned with certain people. If you go from having a lot of free time, if you go from having a lot of ability to kind of be spontaneous and be like, yeah, let's go and do that, let's go to this event, like, you know, let's go and do this thing, and then you suddenly don't, or over time you don't, because obviously you're more discerning with your time and you're more deliberate with your time. Sometimes people aren't gonna like that because they're like, oh, so-and-so's changed, like, you know, Hattie used to be able to be spontaneous, come out whenever, and now that's not happening. That might bother people, and it might mean that you lose certain people because they're kind of spontaneous, they have a lot of free time, and maybe they don't have like the same goals as you. So it's going to change when you start to work towards something that you feel passionate about, and you have to dedicate more of those hours to your passion. You can no longer give them your energy, your time in the way that you once did, and you can no longer sort of just be spontaneous. You have to plan it ahead. When you're working on yourself and you're working on like your goals, you just don't have the emotional energy or like capacity to be spontaneous because you've had to dedicate like a lot of your day to like working quite hard. So you do have to give yourself time to emotionally and mentally prepare to socialize, because you've used up so much of your energy on your passions. So you can't be spontaneous because you know that you'd be just like a mop. You'd be like, I'm so drained, like I can't give you what I want to give you. So it really helps people who are kind of like short on time to have a bit of a plan. And then the other thing is that, again, you just don't have the physical time. You know, you can't be spontaneous. You have to kind of like plan ahead because you've got other commitments going on that you've decided to commit to that week or that day. You can't just, you know, do stuff at the drop of a hat. And some people are annoyed by that because it's like, oh, they used to do that and now they don't. So the change can sometimes be quite jarring for people, and people don't like it, and that's okay. Like, they're not aligned right now, and that's absolutely fine. I mean, I think about my friends now, like we're all kind of in the same boat, working towards our dreams, working towards our goals, and we dedicate specific time to see each other, and that works really well because I'm fortunate in that like my friends are in a similar position from me. Okay, apologies, got a bit sidetracked. I was just selling my car, but what I was saying is that it's okay if people kind of fall out of your life or kind of move in and out of your life because of this, because it's a natural experience that every entrepreneur, every creator, every artist who actually goes for what they want will experience. You know, some people just don't get the fact that people need to be more deliberate with their time, and that's okay. The final thing I will say is sometimes we just fall out of alignment with people. Think about our 20s. Some of us are getting married, some of us are traveling, some of us are, you know, like, you know, working to be an entrepreneur, working on our craft. Some of us are, you know, going up the career ladder. Some of us really just don't know what we're doing at all, and we're kind of just winging it and just figuring out what we really want to do. Some of us are part-time artists. Some of us are, you know, working high-end jobs. Some of us are working lower paid jobs. Like, sometimes your friends are going to fall by the wayside because you're just out of alignment with them. You know, you don't have as many things in common, you don't have as much common ground to have conversations around. You know, there's you don't get the same frames of references anymore. You might have moved somewhere as well, so obviously naturally you're going to drift from people where geographically you're not in the same place. You've had different experiences. I know that there's certain things that like some of my friends just, or some of my former friends just wouldn't be able to, have common ground with me just because I've just had a very different life from them and have done ever since that. And do you ever have this where, you speak to somebody and you're just like, you get me, like you get my experience, you get even the spirituality side of things, you understand manifestation, you understand that kind of thing. Some people just don't get that, or it's not part of their makeup to kind of see things in the way that you do. Sometimes we're friends with people at school and we're friends with people through uni, but when we start to care about something specific, or we start to hone in on things that really matter to us, things like spirituality, thinking the universe has got your back, and them thinking that maybe it doesn't, they don't necessarily believe in the whole universe thing, you're thinking so differently there. Your frames of reference are going to be so different. You can't necessarily talk about the universe, manifestation, law of attraction, that kind of thing, because it's just not in their interest and it's just not part of their vocabulary. They wouldn't define it as that. So there can be those sort of things where you're just like, they just don't see things in the way that I do. And that's not to say that you should only be going for people that only think like you, of course not, but it's okay if you feel like something like that, where they just don't see the world in the same way, morally, justice wise. I know that I've lost a few friends because I can't overlook if somebody literally says to me they don't really care about other people suffering, other people experiencing injustice. Like, that's not something that I can be okay with. Sometimes you kind of become friends with somebody through work and through something quite a neutral place, like school, uni, even work. It's, you don't necessarily talk about politics or talk about morals or talk about things that really matter. And so you kind of find out later down the line, when you've developed maybe a bit of a friendship with them, that they don't morally align with you, that they have very different political views. And I'm not saying again that people with different political views can't be friends, but what I am saying is, if that's something that's really important to you, and that's something that you could not comfortably sort of hang out with them because you know that you'd have to ignore that part of them that just doesn't sit right with you, it's okay if you want to walk away from them, you want to move on from them. So again, if that's something that just doesn't align with you, that's absolutely okay as well. And like I said, everybody's doing something different in their 20s and their 30s. And sometimes you're just out of line with people and you can kind of come back. Sometimes we kind of converge and diverge, and we kind of come back to people, and that's okay. Sometimes these people aren't here for this particular season, and that's okay. I've reconnected with so many friends, and it just shows that things aren't always necessarily permanent. So point is that if you start to choose yourself, you start to be authentic and act authentically, you are going to lose people that prefer maybe your inauthenticness, prefer you to be silent, or prefer you to show a version of yourself that is palatable to them. And if you want to be successful, you want to be authentic, which again is a massive part of success, the people that require your inauthenticity are going to fall by the wayside. And that's kind of the nature of working out who you are in your 20s in this decade. And just know that if you start to become successful, if you start to kind of like show up for yourself when other people aren't, it's going to bother them. I think a lot of people, again, grapple with things like FOMO and fear of missing out. You're not going to be missing out on anything while you're working on your craft, while you're working on your passion. I can say that straight off the bat. You're not missing out on any random night out, any event, anything like that, when you either prioritize your mental health and look after yourself, or you're working towards your dreams. You're not missing out on anything when you are prioritizing those two things. Anyway, that is it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you sticking around till the end to see all my different points. I hope some of it resonated with you. I hope you feel reassured as well. Definitely check out my videos down below if you are sort of in that space where you're grappling with friendship breakups, you're not sure whether or not to sort of keep certain friends around. Check out my friendship videos. I have so many on them. I've got a playlist, I think, so I'll see if I can link it below. Let me know in the comments what you think, your experiences, what you've experienced once you kind of like start to look towards your future and prioritize yourself. What has been the reaction from some of your friends? Let me know. But with that, thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe, like, share if you feel inclined, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.